All right, guys, today we're taking a look at a coolant leak on this 1.4 liter Ecotec turbo, and particularly difficult to track down type leak, and I'm going to show you what's involved there. And we're going to get our flashlight in a position here. So some of the clues of this leak, if we take a look down here, we would think that, actually I'm going to hold this, we would think that the problem was this hose, right? Because we can see dried up coolant on top of this automatic transmission cooler fluid pipe here, and we can't see it yet down below, but occasionally all the way down at the bottom, all the way down, you'll see some coolant pooling at the bottom there. And if we take a look underneath this hose, hopefully you guys can see that, we can see some DexCool staining underneath there too if we zoom in, right? You can see that kind of crystallization that's going on right there on the bottom of the hose. And so you would think that the problem is the hose. And an easy way to eliminate that as a candidate is you can take a paper towel, something that's going to indicate that you've got fluid. You can put that down underneath. You can give it a squeeze, and you can try to see if the leak is actually coming from there. But it's not. Where we actually found the leak was coming is from the reservoir itself. And you typically expect something like this to either leak at one of these connection points or maybe along the seam. But what we have going on with this particular guy is you can see, if you zoom in here, you can see this distortions around the bottom curve of this tank. They kind of look like scratches. And what that is the tank is got damage there and it's cracked. These are a form of cracks. And if you look right underneath, you can see a little drop has run down from one of these cracks. Now you can actually take a paper towel and you can go under here and you can clean this off. And hopefully you guys will be able to see it when we do that. And if we zoom in on this, get the right amount of lighting here. And what you're going to see is these first couple of cracks here, you can see there's a drop of water forming, or a drop of coolant forming, and it's running right down the tank right there live. So it's a very, very subtle leak, very, very slow leak, and it took a lot of time to track down because it only happens while the tank is hot. So you got to get the engine hot enough and pressurized enough for this type of leak to occur. And then this will just slowly keep dripping down. It'll drip down onto the coolant pipe that we showed earlier. It'll then drip from here onto these transmission cooler lines. It'll dry up and you'll be confused thinking it's this or something related to this. And in fact, it's actually this reservoir tank. So we're going to change this out and I'm going to show you how you can do that. All right, guys, just to check on our leak, we're letting it cool down. I just wanted to show you that as it cools down and slowly drips, you can kind of see the area of accumulation with this particular type of leak. So right down here on the bottom, we can see it starting to accumulate down here. If you don't catch it early enough, it dries up, and then all you have is what we showed earlier with the DexCool residue on the pipe that sits up here that we showed, right? And we won't notice what we see down here. So we're going to still let it cool. It's still too hot to work on, but we almost at the point where we can do this. All right, guys, this is cooled off enough to do this repair and swap this coolant reservoir out. We're going to replace it with this GM part, 950-48411. You can see this is in the new hologram and the new kind of packaging that GM's using to help distinguish when their parts are genuine OEMs versus aftermarket or cheap Chinese fakes. So let's see what we got inside here. Make sure we got what we think we're getting. Yeah, that looks like the correct part here, right? So this piece you can't really see, but it mounts in right under there. We'll take a glimpse at it when we get further along here. All right, so we got an overflow connection here, two 10mm bolts. We're going to transfer the cap from the old to the new, and then we've got this hose over here with a clamp as well. So we're going to start with this guy on top. Get yourself a tool that you can use to remove the to squeeze the clamp. You can either get a pair of long nose pliers, or if you've got one of these hose clamps like I do, you can use that. Just a clamp like this. You can squeeze down something like this and wiggle him back. Put him back right about there. And then we'll be able to wiggle this guy off. Like that. You shouldn't have any coolant or anything coming out of that one. All right, and then we're going to take this guy and we're going to loosen him up. Same kind of deal. Put him back here. Now when we do this guy, you might get a little bit of leaking rather out from taking off that. And then what we're going to do to try and pinch off that hose, get yourself a pair of hose clamps, or if you have a tool like this, that'll work as well. You want to get it super tight though. All right, so take our cap off. Get your 10 millimeter. Take these two guys off. And then there's nothing else holding it after we take these off. All right, so I'm going to take our new one. We'll just throw a cap on here for a minute so we don't lose it. What I'm thinking of doing here is lifting this guy up. Hoping that I can get it to the point where I don't have any coolant on this side of the jar. In fact, you know what I'll do? I think just in case we tip it too far, we'll put the cap back on here, because I just noticed we tipped it a little bit too far right there. All right. We're going to get probably just a little bit of coolant when we pop this hose off. Set that guy right there. Put this guy back into there. Put this guy back into there. Put him back on the mount. Put this back in here. There's a couple of little cavities and channels in here that might trap some of the antifreeze. Jiggle it around a little bit, you can get it out. Looks like we've got it all though. Maybe a couple more drops down there. Yep, that's it. Now we'll put our cap on the new one. Sit this guy down on the ground. Go ahead and put our 10 millimeters back in before we put too much stress on these little arms here that it mounts to. There's no specific torque value on these. You just want to snug it up. You don't want to go crazy on it and deform the plastic. right. At this point, we can release our hose. We'll go get our clamp tool. Take our small end. You can see these marks here help tell you where this guy is supposed to go. Try to get him back on exactly where he was OEM. And then we're going to get the larger one on this guy. As you wiggle it back on, just be sure you don't pull the hose off. Yeah, he's kind of got himself stuck there. Just need to get him just a little bit more open. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. My hand's giving out here with this one. Let's take a minute here to let my hand recover. Take a little bit of the little splash that we had when we had the cap not on all the way. Give it another shot. The reason it's kind of stuck here is that the new connector in the pipe is bigger than the old one. So we're just like a couple of millimeters off with this particular tool getting it opened enough. I'm going to have to stop the camera for a second and get some help on this. All right, guys, just had to two-hand it and get a little help from the camera guy on this one. But it's not quite centered. You see this plus T mark here? You want to have that lined up with this embossing on the new plastic reservoir. And then all we're trying to do here is I'm just trying to get this back on top where it was. Kind of back in its same position. That's it. All right, so we're done. Minimal mess. You know, we wouldn't have spilt a drop if I'd put this cap back on. So my bad on that. But that's it. We've replaced it. If we take a look at the old one, now that we've got it out, we can kind of see those hash marks. Let me see if I can find a good angle in the light. But it just looks like little scratches on the inside. You can see there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. And they're just stress. There's stresses in the plastic. So you can see like the discoloration where the DexCool normally sits here. It's kind of more yellowed. On top, it's kind of still clear, right? It's yellowed here where it has DexCool coolant fumes going through this particular hose there. And you've got some of this discoloration right along top here where you get some of the fumes when it's all heated up. But after time, what happens on these is they just start to crack either here or here from what I've seen. The other place they can crack is they can crack right on this hose, right at the top here. They can also crack right at this hose, right there. So it's just really, quite frankly, guys, it's just shoddy materials, right? You can get cars from the 60s and 70s with these plastic overflow tanks and they're not leaking a drop. And then you get something like this, it's only 5 or 6 years old, and it gets problems like that. But fortunately, it's pretty inexpensive to replace. I'll put a link in the description for this. If you got any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll try to help you out. If this helped you out, saved you some money, go ahead and hit that like button. Helps with discovery of the video. And as always, thanks for watching.